You've felt it before. That flicker of connection. Someone looks at you, smiles just right, says exactly what you needed to hear. It feels real, warm, disarming. But something's off. And by the time you realize it, they already have what they want. This isn't charm, it's precision. The dark empath doesn't chase. They draw you in. They speak your language, echo your wounds, and offer shelter, while quietly rearranging your mind. You never hear the door close. You never feel the cage until it's velvet-lined and locked. They aren't cold like narcissists. They're colder because they understand you, they see you, and still choose to use you. This video is not a warning. It's an initiation. You will learn how to become what the world can't defend against. A presence that comforts, then consumes. A smile that saves, then sways. No rage, no cruelty, just silence, study, and perfect emotional aim. This world does not reward softness, empathy, kindness, sensitivity, once seen as virtues, are now treated like vulnerabilities. If you're the one who feels deeply, who understands pain, who actually listens, you're the one who gets chewed up first. But what if that sensitivity didn't make you weak? What if it became the sharpest blade you carry? This is where the dark empath is born. Not as a predator, not as a manipulator, but as a survivor. Someone who felt too much for too long and finally decided to stop bleeding. The dark empath walks through the world like a mirror, seeing the wounds behind every mask, the fear behind every threat, the emptiness in every loud boast. But they no longer get pulled into the chaos. They use what they see to protect themselves. They don't exploit emotions, they endure them. They carry the storm in silence and walk into rooms like they already know what everyone hides. And in a world built to crush the sensitive, that is a terrifying power. You don't become this way by choice. You become this way because kindness alone didn't work. Because being honest got you used. Because being good nearly got you destroyed. So now, you don't raise your voice. You don't explain yourself. You observe. You absorb. You adapt. You've learned to control your empathy, not to manipulate others, but to protect yourself from them. Because the more you felt, the more you got hurt. So you stopped trying to be understood. Now you understand everyone and trust no one. The dark empath is not heartless. They've just had to bury the parts of their heart that kept getting stabbed. And once you reach that point, you don't come back. You rise, not to dominate the world, but to survive it without being broken by it again. You don't scream to the world that you've changed. You don't post it. You don't preach it. You just become someone they can no longer access. That's how the dark empath rises, not with chaos, not with cruelty, but with clarity. Cold, beautiful clarity. You stop explaining yourself. You stop defending your kindness. You stop giving people endless second chances just because you can feel where their pain comes from. Because one day you realize feeling their pain doesn't mean you have to carry it. That's the turning point. You've always seen people more clearly than they see themselves. Their joy, their lies, their loneliness. They've always been loud to you, even when hidden behind smiles and small talk. But before, that insight made you vulnerable. It made you a target. You tried to help. You tried to save. You tried to love without limit. And they used it. They drained you, not because they were evil, but because you were open. They took what was soft in you and mistook it for weakness. Again, and again, and again. Until one day you didn't break. You hardened. That's when the shift happens. That's when the empath becomes something else. Something sharper, quieter, more precise. That's when you become the dark empath, but not the villain they fear. You don't manipulate, you don't deceive, you don't scheme. You simply stop bleeding for people who wouldn't do the same for you. And that silence is terrifying. You start watching more than speaking. You start listening not to comfort, but to remember. You become observant, strategic, emotionally precise. You don't call people out anymore. You let them reveal themselves. You don't argue. You vanish. You don't seek closure. You close the chapter yourself. You use your emotional radar not to fix people, but to avoid them, to read them before they can even shape a sentence, to know exactly when someone is lying, flattering, pretending, or probing. You walk into rooms and you can feel what everyone's hiding. You don't flinch. You don't speak on it. You just adjust. And that adaptability, that control, that's what makes you powerful. Not because you play games, but because you no longer allow anyone else to play them with you. You don't seek approval. You don't need to be liked. You don't sacrifice your sanity just to belong. You belong to yourself now. And the world hates that. Because most people are performing. They're addicted to attention, dependent on reaction, controlled by their need to be accepted. But not you. You've trained yourself to thrive in silence, to stay calm when provoked, to walk away with dignity rather than cling with desperation. And that's the real threat. Because nothing terrifies weak people more than someone they can't guilt, can't shame, can't manipulate through kindness or connection. Someone who sees through them and still refuses to participate in the drama. They'll call you cold. They'll call you selfish. They'll say you've changed. And you have. You've stopped sacrificing your soul just to make others comfortable. The dark empath doesn't use emotion to destroy. They use it to survive. They don't weaponize empathy. They wear it like armor. They feel deeply, but only for those who've earned it. They connect, but never at the cost of themselves. In a world where sensitivity is exploited and silence is mistaken for weakness, becoming a dark empath isn't about turning evil. It's about becoming immune. Immune to guilt. Immune to manipulation. Immune to the endless noise of people trying to use your goodness against you. And once you've reached that state, once you've accepted that not everyone deserves your light, you don't just survive the world. You move through it like a shadow, untouchable, unbothered, unshaken. Because nothing is more dangerous than a person who has the ability to feel everything and the discipline to protect themselves from all of it. You're not heartless. You just stopped announcing your heart to people who treated it like a doormat. You're not cold. You've just stopped burning yourself alive to keep others warm. But that's not how the world sees it, is it? Because when you were open, gentle and forgiving, they smiled. When you gave them unlimited access to your time, your emotions, your energy, they called you pure. But the moment you changed, the moment you put up a boundary, the moment you said no without explaining yourself, suddenly you became difficult, arrogant, cold. That's the paradox of the dark empath. You feel everything. You understand everyone. But no one truly understands you. And that's not an accident. It's by design. Because once you've been burned enough, you stop broadcasting your soul. You learn to read the room without revealing your hand. You let others speak while you silently decode their patterns. You let them misunderstand you, because their assumptions reveal more about them than your explanations ever could. They call you mysterious, distant, maybe even dangerous. Good. Let them. The more they underestimate you, the more space you have to move undetected. The more they project onto you, the more they expose their own weaknesses. And the less they understand you, the more power you hold. Because here's the truth. Power isn't in being seen. Power is in being unreadable. People fear what they can't categorize. And the dark empath doesn't fit any category. You're not a manipulator, but you're not naive. You're not cruel, but you won't tolerate disrespect. You're not loud, but your silence is deafening. You sit in rooms where everyone is pretending to be confident, pretending to be happy, pretending to be in control, and you see through it all. You know who's lying to themselves. You know who's pretending to like you. You know when someone's being fake nice just to disarm you. And instead of confronting them, you observe, you collect data, you catalog behavior. You let people dig their own graves with their own performances. And that's what makes you powerful. Because you're not trying to prove yourself anymore. You're not trying to fix people. You're not trying to be liked. You're playing a different game now, one they can't even see. It's not about domination. It's not about control. It's about liberation. You've freed yourself from the need to be understood, and in doing so, you've become immune to their opinions. Their praise doesn't move you. Their insults don't touch you. They don't know who you are. They never did, and now they never will. Because the dark empath is a paradox they can't solve. Soft but untouchable, kind but unyielding, emotional but never out of control. You walk alone, not because you hate people, but because you finally realized not everyone deserves access to your presence. You became selective, and in this age of desperation for validation, being selective is revolutionary. Let them call it arrogance. Let them say you've changed. They're right. You've changed in the most dangerous way possible. You feel everything and owe nothing. And the more misunderstood you are, the safer you become. They think emotional intelligence is soft. They think reading people makes you weak. That feeling too much means you'll get eaten alive. But here's what they don't understand. When you're a dark empath, emotions aren't a liability. They're a weapon. You walk into a room and your radar switches on. The tone in their voice, the twitch in their eye, the fake laugh, the tight smile. You don't just hear words. You read the truth under the words. And that's where your power lies. You're not reacting. You're calculating. Most people walk blindfolded into traps. You see the trap before it's built. You see the betrayal before the handshake. You see the knife while they're still smiling. That's what emotional intelligence really is. Strategic survival. You're not out to control anyone. You're not out to play games. You're out to protect your peace in a world that profits from your chaos. And the irony? The world only praises emotional intelligence when it serves them. When you use your empathy to heal others, they love you. When you use your empathy to protect yourself, they fear you. Because the moment you stop bleeding for everyone else, the moment you redirect that emotional depth inward, toward self-respect, boundaries, and vision, they no longer benefit from you. You're no longer the emotional mule. You're no longer the soft shoulder for their mess. Now you're a mirror. And mirrors terrify people who hate their reflection. They'll say you've become too serious, too distant, too intense. But really, you've become aware. You've stopped explaining yourself. You've stopped justifying your silence. You've stopped smiling to make others comfortable. Because you've seen what most people miss. That in the real world, empathy without awareness is suicide. The dark empath doesn't fall into that trap. You've weaponized your ability to feel. You can sense hidden intentions before they surface. You can feel manipulation like a temperature shift. You can walk away without warning because you don't need confirmation anymore. You've seen enough. This isn't paranoia. This is pattern recognition. The ones who call you cold are the ones who can't control you. The ones who say you're too sensitive are the ones who can't handle your insight. And the ones who think they fooled you, you've seen through them a long time ago. But you say nothing, because you've learned silence is sharper than confrontation. Your emotional intelligence is no longer a bridge for others to walk across. It's a fortress. It's a filter. It's how you survive the unspoken wars of daily life, without scars they can see. This is not about being heartless. It's about being heart-smart. You're not shutting down your feelings. You're locking them behind a wall with a code only you know. You observe people first. You let them show you who they are. And when they think you're easy to read, that's when you disappear from their script entirely. You are not their story. You're the editor. You no longer beg to be seen. You choose who sees you. And in that choice lies your power. The dark empath doesn't need to manipulate, because they already know the outcome. They don't need to control others, because they've mastered themselves. And in this cruel world, that's the most dangerous power of all. There comes a moment when the war ends, not because the world stopped attacking, but because you stopped reacting. You're not broken. You're not angry. You're just done. This is where the dark empath becomes something even more dangerous, untouchable. You've studied human nature like a battlefield surgeon. You've seen the lies, the betrayals, the sweet smiles masking sharp intentions. You've given people more chances than they deserved, but not anymore. Now you operate in silence. Now you move like a shadow. Now you've built a world no one else can enter unless they earn it. Not beg, not cry, not manipulate. Earn. You no longer explain your absence. You no longer defend your boundaries. You no longer participate in the drama, the noise, the guilt games. Because you've mastered the art of detachment. They think you're cold. They think you've changed. And they're right. You've evolved. The dark empath has crossed the line from emotional survival to emotional sovereignty. You don't chase people anymore. You chase purpose. You chase truth. You chase peace. You've turned your empathy inward, and now it protects you, not poisons you. Because you've learned. Being good is dangerous when the world feeds on good people. So you stopped bleeding to prove your worth. You stopped over-explaining to be understood. You stopped showing up for people who wouldn't crawl for you after you walked through fire for them. And now, you're free. Not the kind of freedom that screams. The kind of freedom that walks away without a sound. No closure, no announcement. Just silence. You've learned to smile without trusting. To listen without absorbing. To love without losing yourself. This is the final form of the dark empath. Not someone who plays games, but someone who refuses to be played. You don't expose people. You let them expose themselves. You don't fight for your place. You walk into the room and command it, not with noise, but with presence. They feel it, the weight, the quiet authority, the unreadable eyes, because you've become a mirror that reflects nothing back unless you choose to. You're not an open book anymore. You're a locked manuscript. And only those with the patience, pain, and purity to understand your pages get to read your truth. Most won't. And you're fine with that. Because now your world is quiet. And in that quiet, you hear everything. You see everything. You predict everything. And that is why you are untouchable. You are not here to be liked. You are not here to be accepted. You are here to survive, evolve, and dominate your own reality. With empathy sharpened into intuition, and silence honed into power. They can't understand you. They can't control you. They can't even reach you. You've become what the world fears the most. Someone who once cared deeply, but no longer needs anyone to breathe. You've become the ghost they can't haunt, the soul they can't seduce, the heart they can't break. They said kindness is a strength, that empathy will save the world, that if you just keep being good, everything will eventually fall into place. But you've lived long enough to know that's a lie. The world isn't fair. It doesn't reward the pure. It exploits them. It doesn't protect the sensitive. It crucifies them. And those who feel deeply are the first ones left bleeding. You tried to do it the right way. You gave. You forgave. You stayed loyal even when it cost you. And what did it get you? Disappointment? Betrayal? Loneliness. So you stopped trying to be someone's hero, and you started becoming your own weapon. That's what it means to be a dark empath. Not evil, not manipulative, not heartless, but strategic, aware, dangerously self-controlled. You didn't lose your empathy. You simply stopped wasting it. You learned to read people without giving them a map back to your soul. You trained your mind to feel everything but obey nothing. You mastered the power of silence. And most importantly, you stopped apologizing for your strength. Because here's the truth. Most people will never say out loud, the world doesn't care about your good intentions. It only responds to leverage, presence, and quiet power. And the dark empath has all three. You don't scream for attention. You command it by simply existing. You don't manipulate people. You allow them to reveal themselves. And you act accordingly. You don't fear abandonment. You choose solitude over foolish loyalty. You don't beg. You observe. You don't chase. You attract. And when you walk away, it's final. This is not about becoming cruel. It's about becoming untouchable. You're still capable of love, but it's no longer blind. You're still kind, but with boundaries as sharp as razors. You still feel, but you don't let those feelings run your life. You've taken your pain, your silence, your emotional depth, and turned them into armor. You are the wolf that blends into the flock until the moment it matters. And by then, it's too late. The world will misunderstand you. They'll call you cold, calculating, distant. Let them. You don't need validation from the same people who once tried to break you. You're no longer trying to fit in. You're building a throne from the pieces they tried to bury you under. This is your power. You didn't become a dark empath by accident. You were forged in chaos, sharpened by betrayal, strengthened by every time you had to stay silent while being torn apart. And now you stand alone. Not because you couldn't belong, but because you chose not to kneel. You see the world for what it is, a game, a battlefield, a stage of masks. And you walk through it all, eyes wide open, unbothered, unbreakable. That's why you're dangerous. Because you feel everything and still play to win. Because you know darkness and don't run from it. Because you have empathy, but not for fools. You're no longer trying to save the world. You're building your own. And to anyone watching who's felt like they were too soft, too emotional, too broken to make it in this world, understand this. You don't need to change who you are. You need to stop handing your power to people who never deserved it. Become the dark empath, the one who listens, understands, and never forgets. The one who no longer asks, only acts. The one who rises alone and never falls again. This world doesn't need more smiles. It needs more people who know pain and still move forward. Who carry empathy like a sword, not a weakness. So if this resonated with you, this is your sign. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and send this to the quiet one who's about to rise. Because your story isn't over. It's just begun. And now the world will learn what happens when someone who feels deeply stops playing nice. You are the dark empath. You were made for this.